Create React app with Material UI. Material UI is an open source and free to use component library. Links to the source code and all resources will be in the description. First, we need to open Visual Studio Code. If you guys need help learning how to install VS Code, I'll link to a video up top and down below. Here, we want to open the folder where we want to create this React application simply by selecting the folder. Here, we want to open a new terminal, and everything we do in today's video will be in the command prompt so we can close out of the PowerShell. And to create our React app, we're going to use npm create Vite at latest and go ahead and hit enter. And this is going to take a second to go ahead and run. And from here, we want to select our project name, and we're going to enter in a period, and that's going to name our project whatever the name of our directory is here. Click enter, package name is fine, and then go ahead and select React and JavaScript. At this point, we want to install all of our dependencies, so we'll say npm install, and this will take a second to install our dependencies. Once this is done, we're going to say npm run dev to open our live server and make sure that we set this up correctly. Here, we'll click on this localhost URL. That'll go ahead and open our browser, and then what you guys are going to see here is a bunch of generic Vite and React code. If you guys are seeing this, you successfully set up your React app using Vite. But we don't want any of this stuff, so we're going to navigate back to VS Code, and we're going to navigate into the src file, and here in our app.jsx, we're going to remove the Vite logo, React logo, and the use state here. Down here, we'll delete this state. And inside of our return statement, we want to remove everything except for our fragment here. So we'll go ahead and select all of this, get rid of it. Next, we want to navigate to our app.css, delete everything here, go to our index.css and delete everything here. If we go back to our live server, you guys are going to see that everything is gone. Navigate to where it says assets here. We don't want this react.svg anymore, so we're going to go ahead and delete that. We'll go ahead and move it to the recycle bin. And here we'll create another folder called images. And here is where I'm going to paste in all of the images that I'll use in today's video. Next, we want to navigate to our index.html, and here is where we can title our page. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and title this React MUI for now. And here, since we deleted our icon, what we want to do is change this image here to a PNG. Here for the href, we want to go into the src, into the assets, into the images, and get the new favicon image. So if we navigate back to our live server, you guys are going to see my new favicon image here and my new title as well. Next, we want to go to extensions and make sure that we install MUI snippets. So we'll go ahead and search for that and go ahead and install and enable this first one here by VS Code Shift. And now we can navigate back to our browser and go to MUI, and we're going to select this first link here. This will also be available in the description. And now we're going to navigate to docs, go to material UI, and it's going to give you guys a basic overview of what's going on here, but we're going to skip past that, go to installation, and we want to copy this first npm statement, go back into VS Code, open a new command prompt, simply paste in this npm statement. And what I'm going to do to show you guys what's going on is go to the package.json, and you guys want to make sure that your React and React DOM dependencies are installed before you run this installation, or it's going to mess everything up. And once you confirm that, go ahead and run this npm statement, and that will install MUI. Once this is done running, you guys are going to notice that that installs 3 new dependencies for us. Now we'll go back to the MUI installation here, and if you guys want to use styled components, you're going to want to go ahead and run this today, but we're not going to be doing that, so we'll go ahead and skip that. So next we want to install the default font of Roboto. So what we want to do is copy this installation statement here, go back to VS Code, simply paste it in and run it. Now that you guys can see we successfully installed that, what we want to do is go into our app.jsx and go ahead and import that in. So what we'll do is go ahead and paste in import font source / Roboto. Now we need to install one more dependency, so we'll go back here to MUI, and down here we want to use this npm install so we can use the icons that MUI has to offer. So what I'll do is copy that, go ahead and paste it into my command prompt again, and go ahead and run that. Now you guys can see we have all of our dependencies successfully installed. Now we want to navigate back to our src folder and go ahead and create a new folder called components. And here is where we're going to house all of our components. So first, we'll go ahead and create a new folder here called Navbar. Inside of this Navbar component, we're going to go ahead and create a navbar.jsx file. And then we're also going to create a navbar.css file. And we're not going to be using this CSS file at all today, but it's just a good practice to create it anyway. Now we can navigate back to our navbar.jsx, and what I'm going to do is type in RAFCE to generate our boilerplate like so. And so at this point, what I'm going to do is move VS Code over to the left and my live server onto the right, and you guys are going to see that nothing is displaying at this point. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and close up my terminal. That's not going to mess with our live server. That's going to continue to run. This is just going to give us some more space. And so we actually see our navbar text here inside of this div. What we need to do is import this into our app.jsx, import our new component using the import statement, and we want to import our navbar. You guys are going to see it already knows what we want to do, so we'll click that. You guys are going to see this is coming from our components, navbar, and then navbar needs to be .jsx for our JSX file here. We can use this component down here like so, and you guys are going to see that the navbar text displays. So now that we have that set up, I'm going to navigate back over here to Material UI, and I'm going to go down to here where it says components. What you guys are going to see here is a list of a whole bunch of different components that you can use, and it shows you how you can use them. So for example, with our button, it's going to show us these examples, and then it's also going to show you all of the code if you click this button here. But what we want to do is search specifically for our app bar, which is going to serve as our navigation bar today. And you guys are going to see it gives us a bunch of templates down here that we can use. And what we're going to do is copy this first one here. And I'm going to copy the code inside of this return statement, go back to my navbar component here, and simply go ahead and paste it in to replace this content here. You guys are going to see that nothing is happening yet because we haven't imported any of our MUI components. So what we need to do is go back here, and up here at the top, we want to copy all of these import statements and simply paste it in to our navbar.jsx. Now you guys can see that the navigation bar is successfully displaying here. Well, what you guys are going to quickly notice is that this is not dynamic, it's not responsive. So that's going to be the biggest problem with using MUI components, is it gives you kind of a template here, but it doesn't actually add any of the additional features that you would want out of like a navbar here, for example. So what we're going to do is go ahead and remove all of this content here, and we're just going to go ahead and create it ourselves from scratch. So what I'm going to do is create my fragment here so all those errors go away. And once we do that, we can start creating our components. So we'll say MUI followed by app bar here. And then what we want to do is make the position sticky, meaning it's going to stay at the top of our page. You guys can see that creates our basic navbar here. And what you guys are going to see is that it also creates a toolbar and a typography component as well. And it makes our color equal to primary. If you guys don't specify a color here, primary is always going to be this blue color. And it successfully imports all of our components up here. And before we move on, you guys are going to see we have this weird margin here. So what we're going to do is navigate to our app.css and go ahead and target the body and change our margin to 0. And this is going to be the only custom CSS style that we use today. So back here in our navbar.jsx, we have this, but what we also want is we want a container component. So we'll go ahead and specify that. And for max width, we don't need that. So we'll go ahead and delete that like so. And what we need to do is move all of this content into our container like so. And so at this point we have our app bar, which is used to create a navigation, our container, which is used to control the layout and the width of our content inside of it, our toolbar, which helps us align everything, and we also have this typography component, which is used in MUI to control our text. So anywhere you include text, you have to use this typography component. For our variant here, it's equal to an H6 right now. We're going to change that to an H5, and then we're simply going to put in our text coffee shop, and you guys will see that displaying here. Next, we also want to include an icon over here on the left side. So we'll navigate back to MUI and we'll go ahead and search for icons and click material icons here. This is going to give you a list of a bunch of free icons that you can use, but we're going to search for this coffee cup here. Go ahead and copy this import statement, navigate back to VS Code, and simply just paste in that import here. And now we can go above our typography and go ahead and use this icon like so. And now you guys can see it showing up here. Underneath our typography component, we want to create a button. So we'll go ahead and search for the button here, create that. As for this variant, we don't want this to be equal to text. Let's change this to inherit. And then we want to add an href attribute and simply link to our home ID, and then we'll include the text home, and you guys can see it showing up here. And after that, we can just simply go ahead and copy this button, paste it down below, change our text to coffee and our href to link to the coffee ID. And you guys are going to see this is all scrunched up, so we don't really want it like that. So we'll navigate back to our typography component, and here we're going to create what's called an SX attribute. And all this means is our styling here. So what we're going to do is put all of our styling within double curly brackets here. Is use this to style now. So we'll say flex grow, and we'll make that equal to 1, for example. And now you guys will see it's spaced apart appropriately. And this SX attribute here gives us a lot of flexibility to style. So if I want to put in something like a custom background color, I can simply go here, say background color, and then I can go ahead and in quotation marks say something like red, and you guys will see that takes effect here. So this kind of removes the need to have a separate CSS file, because we can successfully use our SX attribute to style all of our MUI components. But obviously this is ugly, so we'll remove it. And now we want coffee shop to display in a custom font. So what we'll do is navigate back to our browser, go to Google Fonts, and here, once we get into it, we want to search for Eagle Lake. Select this font here, click Get Font, get embed code, copy this HTML, go back to VS Code, navigate into our index.html, and up here underneath our title, we'll go ahead and paste in that CDN. Now we can go back to our navbar.jsx, and here in our typography SX attribute, we can add a comma back here and specify a custom font family. Make sure you include this inside of quotation marks, and we can simply paste in our custom font, and now you guys can see it displaying in the font that we want. Now you guys can see we have a basic navigation bar set up, but it is not responsive yet. So to make it responsive, what we need to do is set up a state. So before our return statement, we'll create a const and we'll create our state variable called drawer open. Our state function that we're going to use to set our variable over here, we'll call this set drawer open. Make this equal to use state. And then you guys want to make sure this is successfully imported like so above. And then inside of our parentheses here is going to be our initial state. We want to set that to false. And we're going to eventually use this to create our mobile navigation bar. Next, I want to create another variable, and this one is going to be called theme. And all we're going to do here is make this equal to use theme. And we want to make sure that we import that like so from MUI, and you guys will see it showing here. We want to include parentheses. Next, we'll create another variable called is mobile. Make this equal to our use media query, and this is going to help us import the media query functionality. And then we simply want to use our theme, grab our breakpoints, dot down, and then get our medium breakpoint here. So this may look really complicated, but all we're doing is getting our theme, getting our media query functionality, and then selecting our medium breakpoint so we can display our navigation bar differently from medium down to our small devices. Next, we need to create a basic function called toggle drawer. And what we need to do is pass in the open parameter, pass in empty parentheses here, and then we need to create our function. Pass empty parentheses, and then all we're going to do inside of this function is use our set drawer open state function like so to change our state variable of drawer open. And you guys are going to see in a moment why this is so important. And the last thing we want to do up here is create a basic array, and we're going to call this drawer links. And inside of this array, we're going to have two objects. The first one is going to have our text key, and this is simply going to be equal to home. And then we also need to have our link, which is going to be our home ID. And then we just copy this and we'll paste it down below, change our text to coffee, and then our ID to coffee. And all we're doing here is creating a basic array to store the information for our mobile navigation that we're about to create. Now down here below our app bar, what we want to do is create a drawer, and this is going to be used as our mobile navigation. So here you guys can see that we created it. We don't need this variant here, and then our anchor needs to be changed from left to right. And all this means is that our drawer for our mobile navigation is going to open from the right side of our screen. Here we need to create an open attribute and make this equal to our drawer open state variable. So all this is doing is initializing this drawer as false based on our state right here. So when somebody goes into our website right off the bat, it doesn't have a random mobile navigation open. Next, we want to add our onClose attribute here. And what we want to do is make this equal to our toggle drawer state function and change our variable here to false. Inside of our drawer, we want to create a box component. You guys are going to see that I'm running into an error because I need to successfully import this. So I'll go above and simply copy one of these import statements, paste it, change this button to box, and then this needs to come from box. And you guys are going to see that all of these imports are getting really lengthy. So what I'm going to do is go to this first one where I'm importing my navbar, include that inside of curly braces, and at the end where it says /navbar, I'm going to remove that. So what I can do at this point is just import all of my components right here. So for example, I can say toolbar, and then I can delete this. So now you guys can see I'm importing all of my components here in one line instead of a bunch of separate lines. And all this box is it's basically like a div in normal HTML. It's just used to implement styling. So here what I'm going to do is implement that styling using my attribute, and I want to set the width of this to 200. I want to make the role equal to presentation, and all this does is help with accessibility. And I want to add an on-click attribute that uses the toggle drawer function here. So if somebody clicks off of a link somewhere, it's going to close my drawer. And now I want to create a list component, and I need to make sure that I successfully import this up top. And inside of this list, we want to dynamically render the content from our drawer links array. So we'll copy the name of this, simply paste it right here, use our map method to loop through it, and inside of our callback function we want to pass in a link item parameter and an index. And to create individual list items, we'll go ahead and create our list item component, and you guys are going to see that helped me import it right here. And for each list item we need to add a key to make sure that this works, so we'll simply make that equal to index, and then we just want to disable our padding here. Now we want to add our list item button component. Make sure that is imported up here. So we'll say list item button like so. So for our list item button, we're actually going to specify component. And all this does is it lets us tell our browser exactly how we want this component to display in HTML. So we'll say component equal to A, meaning that these buttons are going to display as anchor elements. And then for our href attribute, we want to use our link item dot link here. So all we're doing is looping through this array and selecting our links like so for each. And now we want to add an on-click event listener, because if somebody clicks on a link, we want our drawer to close. So we'll call our toggle drawer function and make this equal to false. Then to make the accessibility good here, we'll add an area label attribute that says navigate to, and then we'll put whatever the text is here. Now we want to add our list item text. So we'll go ahead and create that like so. Make sure that imports up here at the top, which it did not. So we'll say list item text. And then this is actually a self-closing element, so we can go ahead and change it to this. And then to add our text, we'll go ahead and say primary and make that equal to our link item dot text. So now you guys can see we have our mobile navigation drawer set up, but it's not displaying when our screen is small enough. So what we can do is come up here, change this to true, and you guys will see that'll open up our mobile navigation. But obviously we want somebody to be able to click on something to do that, so we'll change this back to false for now. And using our isMobile variable that again gets our medium breakpoint here, we can set up conditional statements. So down here under our typography component, we want to go ahead and dynamically render some content here. So what we want to say is if this is mobile, and all that means is if our viewport width is medium or smaller, is include our icon button component, change our color to inherit, and then on click we want to open our mobile drawer. So we'll say toggle drawer, and then we'll change this to true. And then what we need to do is get our icon. So we'll go back over here to material UI, search for our menu, select this one here, and we want to go ahead and import this one. So we'll go back to VS Code, make sure we successfully import in our icon. And then down here within our icon button, we can successfully use that menu icon. So now you guys can see it displaying, and if we click on this, it will open our drawer, and all we need to do is make sure that we change these when we're using our mobile navigation instead. So what we'll do is say when isMobile is false, meaning it's larger than a medium viewport width, what we want to do is go ahead and display our buttons, and we'll include a fragment here, and then we'll simply copy these two buttons down here and paste them in like so. So now you guys can see that we have a completely responsive navigation bar using Material UI. And if we shrink this down, you guys will see that we have our mobile menu icon here. And once we click on this, it opens our drawer dynamically. Next, I want to show you guys an awesome functionality in MUI, and this is going to be creating your own theme. So you guys are going to see that our nav bar, the primary color is blue, and that's not the color scheme we want for our coffee shop. So to change this, we're going to create a new file in our assets folder, and we're going to call this theme.js. And inside of this, we want to import our create theme from MUI like so. Then we want to create a theme variable, make this equal to our create theme import. And what we want to do is customize our palette here, which is going to be the colors. So what we want to do is change the primary color. And to do this, we want to specify main, and then we can paste in whatever custom color we want here. And we want to go ahead and do this one more time. So we'll go ahead and copy this, paste it down below. But for this one, we're going to go ahead and change this to our secondary color. And then we'll change out our hex value here. And then we want to go ahead and export default our theme. Now we want to go back to our app.jsx here, and we need to go ahead and import this new theme using import theme from, and then we need to navigate to where that theme is housed, which is going to be in our assets. And then we want to get our theme.js here. Now you guys are going to see that theme is still not working. So what we want to do is import our theme provider. We want to select this one, and then all of our components within our app.jsx, we need to wrap inside of our theme provider component. So we'll go ahead and create it like this. And then instead of having our nav bar here, we'll go ahead and paste this inside of our theme provider. And lastly, for our theme provider, we want to add the attribute theme and then make this equal to the theme that we imported up here. Now you guys can see that it's displaying using our custom theme color. And if we go back to our navbar.jsx, we can also change this primary to secondary to use our secondary color instead. And this is going to be the custom color that we added to our theme. But for now, we'll leave this as primary. Next, we're going to create another component called hero. And inside of this, we'll do the same thing again. Create a hero.jsx file and a hero.css file. Inside of the hero.jsx, I'm going to go ahead and create the boilerplate. And since you guys already get what's going on here, I'm simply going to paste in all of the imported components that we're going to be using. And I'm going to import the single image that we're going to be using in this component. So here we're going to create a container component. And again, we don't need this max width. Add an ID equal to home. And now what we're going to do to make this responsive is we're going to use our stack component. And what this is going to do is it's going to set up what is basically a Flexbox container. And so for this component, what we want to do is specify a direction. And this direction, we want it to be responsive. So for extra small viewport widths, we want this stack to display as a column. And we're going to go ahead and skip over small. And when we get up to a medium-sized viewport width, we want this to display as a row. And then between each item here, we want to have a spacing of 2. And now we want to style this with our SX attribute. And here we'll say width 100%, justify our content to the center. And if you guys know anything about Flexbox, we're basically using all of the CSS styling that you would use for a normal Flexbox container. And then we'll say align items to the center as well. And then we'll say min height needs to be 85 VH. Create our first column here. And to do that, we're going to use a box component. And then at this point, I feel like you guys probably already get the styling. So we'll just go ahead and paste in the styling that we want here. And we're going to have the width of this responsively change. So when it's displaying as a column here, we want it to take up 100% width. But when it's in a row layout, we want it to take up only 50%. And inside of this box, all we want is some basic text. So we'll go ahead and paste in 2 typography components. The first variant, H1. For the second typography is going to be H4. And then we're going to responsively resize our text based on the viewport width. So now what we can do is we want to actually display this in our app. So what we need to do is go ahead and import this. So we'll go ahead and say import hero, and then VS Code will help us out with the rest. And then underneath our navbar component here, we can use our newly created hero components. You guys can see that pop up successfully. But back inside of our hero, what we want to do is create one more box component. So we'll go ahead and create that like so. We'll go ahead and include our styling, and the width of this is going to be 50% with padding, and align the text to the center. Now within this box, we just want to have an image. So we'll create a normal image element. And for our SRC, we want to use the espresso image that we imported up top right here. Include our alternative text, and then here we want to simply include a style attribute and make the width of this 100%. And then this needs to be in quotation marks. And now you guys can see that this is set up responsively based on our viewport width using MUI. And then if we go down to a mobile viewport width, you guys will see that it's in a column layout instead of a row. And next we want to go back to components, create a new folder and call this coffee, and then we'll simply create our coffee.jsx and our coffee.css, and then we'll go back to our JSX file, use our RAFCE, generate our boilerplate, and then we can simply go back to our app.jsx and we can go ahead and import that final component here like this, and then we can simply use that new component down here. You guys can see coffee displaying right here. Now we're going to go back to our coffee.jsx, but before we start displaying the products for our React app over here, what we want to do is go back to our assets folder, create a new file called coffee.js, navigate to this one, and what I'm going to do here at the top is import 3 images. These are going to be images for each one of our products, so we're going to have 3 products here. Down here we want to create a products array, and each product is going to have its own respective ID, title, image, price, and description. And then we want to export default our products array. Now we can go back into our coffee.jsx, and what we want to do is import our products from our assets.coffee.js file. And up here, I'm going to again paste in all of the imports for the components that we're going to be using, with the one exception down here. I wanted to separate this out because it's a little bit confusing as far as the grid works in MUI. So if we go over here, go to components and scroll down and find grid, you guys are going to see we have grid, and then it says deprecated, and then we have grid version 2. So what you guys don't want to do is use the deprecated version. You want to use the new version of the grid here. And the only difference is that it's grid 2 instead of normal grid. So that's the reason we're doing it separately, because we don't want it to accidentally import the deprecated grid component. So you guys can see that I want to be exact when I'm grabbing this new grid component. So I'm going to get rid of this now. I'm going to go ahead and create a box component. I'm going to add some custom margin here, and I'm going to add an ID of coffee. Inside of this box, I'm going to add a typography that has an H5 variant, text align centered, and all this says is featured coffees. And you guys can see this displaying below with the margin that we have on our box. Now what I want to do is start creating a grid component. And the way grid works in MUI is it requires that you put the container attribute like this. And between each item, we want a spacing of 3. And then we're going to style with a padding of 3 and a justify content center. And inside of this grid, I want to dynamically render all of the products that we created in our coffee.js array here. So to do that, what we want to do is use our products.map, and this is going to help us loop through each product. So we'll pass in a parameter of product, and then we want to create another grid component here. Make sure this also has the closing. Make sure you spell this correctly or it won't work. And for this one, since it's a child, we need to add our item and make this equal to true to make sure that our grid version 2 component works. Now we can start specifying our breakpoints, starting with extra small. We want to make this equal to 12. And then for small, we want to make this equal to 6. And for medium, we want to make this equal to 4. So for extra small screens, we're going to have a 1 single column layout. For small screens, we're going to have 2 columns. And for medium screens and anything bigger than medium, we're going to have 3 columns. And you guys will see how that looks in a moment. And at this point, what we want to do is create what's called a card component. So we'll go ahead and search for card here. You guys can use one of these templates that it provides here, but what we're going to go ahead and do is just start from scratch. So it makes it a little bit easier, in my opinion, without having to deal with all this and figure out what's going on. So what we're going to go ahead and do is create our card like this, specify the styling that we want of max width, text align, and a padding. And then to display an image in this particular card, what we need to do is create a component here called card media. And to display an image within this card, we need to use the card media component like so. And then all we need to do here is specify our component, and we want it to be an image. Give it a height of 200. And then for image, we want to dynamically render the image for each product. So we'll say product.image. And then for our alternative text, we'll just use the title of our product for now. So now you guys can see that all 3 of our images are displaying within a card, and you guys will be able to see this responsiveness here. If I make this a full screen, it starts at 3 columns on large screens, and then I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And as I shrink down, get down to that second width, you guys are going to see that it's 2 columns. And then for really small devices, it's 1 single column. And underneath our card media, we want to create a card content component. Then we'll simply create a typography component here, make our variant equal to an H6 element. And then we want to dynamically render our product.title here, and you guys will be able to see the titles showing up for each now. And then we're going to do the same thing but for our description. So I'll just go ahead and paste this in, and notice that I'm using the color equals text.secondary, which uses our secondary font color here. Then I'll create another typography component here that's an H6 with a primary color and a margin Y of 1. Here what I want to do is display my price. So I'll start with a $, use the product.price.toFixed, which is going to limit this to 2 decimal places by specifying 2. So now you guys can see that we have the title, the description, and the price of each product successfully displaying here. Next, we want to include the button component for each card, and here we simply want to say buy now. And for our variant, we want this to be contained, which is going to make it look like this and change the styling a bit. And then we'll specify our color, make this equal to secondary. You guys will see that changes the button color to our custom green color. Now you guys can see we're done with our dynamic product grid, and we're successfully displaying all 3 of the coffees that we sell at this coffee shop. Congratulations, you just successfully created a beautiful React.js app using Material UI. This application is completely responsive for mobile devices and works dynamically based on however many products you might want to have. If you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out through the comments. I will respond to you. I hope this video helped out. Thanks for watching.